All right. So we have a lot to get to. First off, here at Bionic Buzz, we're all about people's passion. I want to know where your passion for music came from. Was it a certain album you heard, a live performance you saw, or something that was natural for you as a child?
Oh, that's really funny. So I was at a camp for wayward teens.
Oh,
I was
wow.
13, and it was a how do I say this? Like a it was in Hollywood. It was in the Hollywood Hills in Griffith Park. And out of the 2 weeks I was there, on one of the weekends, this is a very interesting story. There was a cover band called City Lights, and I was freaking mesmerized, dude. It was nuts. It was totally nuts. And I remember, as I look back on that was a pivotal point, I think, with music. Um, yeah, that was the first time I was kind of swept up. I like to call it the disease, Stephen. Like,
Yeah, it is.
sure, it's kind of
It's
like
a hold of you,
it's a disease. So that's when, as I look back, that was my first. I don't know. Uh, the first impression of having quite an intense reaction.
Very cool. Well, you've had amazing career as a producer, but you started as in bands, though, right? You opened for bands like Bad Religion and Soul Asylum. Is that right? Or
Full Asylum, Smithereens,
oh wow,
Dramarama. We toured with the Sugarcubes, Bjork's first band, and I have to give
wow.
you a really wonderful story. So, um, the lead singer and Bjork were dating at the time, and they would constantly get into fights. So they were doing their sound check, and so we were young. We were 17, 18, 19, whatever. So we were watching them do their sound check, and they got into this fight on stage. And all of a sudden, everyone walked off the stage, and Bjork was literally on stage, a microphone in her hand, kind of shy and didn't know what to do. I swear to God, she spent 10 minutes and sang in her native language a cappella. And it was the gnarliest fucking thing I've ever
Oh,
seen.
I bet.
It
Jeez.
was awesome.
Yeah. What year was that? I didn't know she had a band before.
Oh yeah, that was probably 83, 4,
Uh-huh.
2, 5, somewhere right around there.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's cool.
check out the Sugar Cube. She was in a band.
Okay, I'll check that out. And what was the name of your band that you were in, or
Oh, that's
bands?
funny. We were called One Day.
That is a cool band name.
Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, so I did it. I
Yeah.
toured. We did our thing.
Um, I want to get into your bands that you produce, but first off, I think you and I have a 6 degree of separation thing that you've actually met my wife, actually, because I had it in my calendar that I was interviewing you, and she was like, "I've met him some way," and then so she was best friends with Stacy Clark, which you worked on their her This Is Unusual EP, I believe, right?
Huh?
Yeah. And then, my wife works for Music Saves Lives, Russell, which I end up working for too. And you end up working with his son on Unlikely Candidates, right? And did you do something with Music Saves Lives also, or?
Well, no, no, I didn't do anything when Music Saves Lives.
Uh-huh.
I worked with Jared's first band, Run Doris Run, and then I introduced him and put him in a new band called the Unlikely
Oh,
Candidate,
really? Okay. Yeah. And then you end up producing all their stuff, including their number
who,
one.
who have a number one song called
Yeah.
Novacaine. Yeah,
Yeah. That's
just
amazing. Cool. So first off, what was it like working with Stacy Clark? I mean, that was a long time ago. I know.
oh God, that was great. She's awesome, and I got to work with a producer who I developed called Ian Kirkpatrick, and Ian hadn't really made a name for himself just yet, and I felt as though Stacy and Ian would make a really great team. And Ian went on to be a super producer, and
Yeah.
actually an uber prolific songwriter and artist.
Mm, very cool. And I mean, everyone loved the first. Well, that wasn't the first one. The first big album for Jimmy Eat World. Bleed America, which you worked on. Well, how did you get hooked up with them?
Well, I was working at Capitol at the time.
Mm,
I brought them in to get signed. I heard a 7-inch, split 7-inch they did with a band called Christie Front Drive. And so we signed them to Capitol, and I worked on Static Prevails and Clarity and Bleed American, or whatever it's called,
yeah.
that record.
Yeah, the huge. Well, my favorite song was "Sweetness" from that. Is there any fun stories working on that song or anything?
I'll tell you a really fun story.
Yeah.
So at the time, Jimmy Eat World were signed to Capitol, and I was working at Capitol as an A&R consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually in the middle of moving from the record before the big record. I don't know what is it called, the Jimmy is it really called now Bleed America?
Bleed America, yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah,
Okay, because
I think it went through name changes, but I think that's what it's kind of.
So the Bleed American record. So I remember at the time, Perry Watts Russell, who is a very famous, wonderful, elegant, just beautiful man, and he was my boss, right?
Uh-huh.
And I sat in his room and I played him Sweetness, and I felt as though it was a great song. It was huge, and he didn't like it.
Really? Wow.
And which happens, right?
Yeah.
It happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I pleaded with him. I said, dude, like, you don't know, this is it. I think we could make a great record here, and here's how we're going to do it. So basically, this is a very interesting story. So ultimately, Capitol dropped Jimmy Eat World. Okay, now hear me out.
Yeah.
Then I had a conversation with Jim and Zach, and I said, hey guys, I don't think you guys should break up. I think at the time, Zach mentioned he may want to, help Jim out, do some producing or whatever. I said, no, we've got to make a record, and it's time. People will love it. Radio will embrace it if you give them something to spin. I said, Mark Trombino is in a stride. I can get you into a studio called Hard Drive. My best friend, Doug Messenger, owns it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. So they grabbed their nuts and they did it. Okay. Now, here's the funny part. Between the time they were actually finishing up the record, I was still at Capitol doing consulting.
Mm-hmm.
Harry comes up to me, true story, and he's heard the actual quote unquote mixed version of Sweetness.
Oh.
And he said, well, what's going on? I said, well, you heard this already. He goes, well, now it's mixed. Now it's better. I said, well, you just dropped the band 4, 5, 6 months ago. So they asked me to go back to Jimmy Eat World to re-sign them.
Wow.
And I refused to do it. There you go. That's a little bit of dirt.
So would they eventually sign with Dreamworks, or they left? So they got dropped by Capitol, and then they wanted to re-sign, right? And then you said no. So what did it go after that?
Well, no. Capitol dropped them. They wanted me to go back and try to get them back on Capitol. I refused,
Mm-hmm.
and then ultimately Jimmy Eat World signed to Dreamworks Records.
Oh wow! How about that? That's some music history there. Very interesting. Now, what about any fun stories working with Plain White Tees? How did you find of them? This is kind of before they were big,
Yeah. Tom is one of the most sincere, incredible, well-deserving, honest human beings I've ever met in my life. He is completely inspired and passionate about all music.
Mm-hmm.
He works his ass off. And I mean, when they were making Hey There Delilah, they were staying at my house. And I remember we were doing A&R and, you know, doing rehearsals. And I remember him playing that song while he was sleeping on my couch.
Oh,
So,
wow.
You know,
Because
I
that
don't know.
song almost didn't make it on the record, right? Or
No, 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 no. It was definitely going to be on the record
yeah,
because if you notice, it
yeah.
was the last song on that record, and the record before that that I produced
Mm-hmm.
had a song called oh my God, to heaven. There was another song. We used to make records back then, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it would be, we would really have a cognitive smart approach, and every record we've done before then, there was a very final song that oh, Radios in Heaven was a song that we put last on one of the previous record, so we wanted to put Hey There Delilah last on the record before. So it was kind of a pattern because at the time people were making records and it was a focus on a full experience.
Yeah, I kind of miss that. I mean, I understand why you release singles now, but to me, I like the full record. You never know which track's going to be someone's favorite, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. What about Neon Trees? Any fun stories? How did you discovered working them, you know?
Well, I had a friend who said, "Hey, Loren, there's this kid I met. His name is Tyler, not a kid, yeah, an adult, whatever, kid, adult." And he said, "You know, he needs your help in terms of songwriting." So Neon Trees signed up for my songwriting program, same thing that Stacy did, like we talked about.
Yeah.
And at the time, my friend was in a band called Sugarcubes. His name was Tim Pagnota.
Yeah, great band. You worked with them too, right? I think it was some albums.
So so we went through. The band came up from Temecula every 2 weeks, and we were in the studio for about 6 months, a little bit longer. And I remember once they got signed, I was lucky enough to get them signed to Island, and and I remember the label wanting to have another producer, and I felt as though going back to Tim was a tremendous idea. So my friend is Justin Kalifowitz, who's the president and CEO of Downtown Music Publishing, and I asked him to come to a rehearsal at about midnight in LA at this studio called Uncle's, which you may or may not have been to or aware of since you're kind of in the thick of things here.
Yeah.
And I remember it was me and Justin and my business partner Brooke Helder, and we did our human best to persuade the band to make their first record with Tim Pagnota, who's never really made a record before, and that was their multi-platinum.
Yeah. Wow. That's some cool stories. I love that. So then I guess go back to Unlikely Candidates, you know. So I remember Run Doris Run, seeing them at Warped Tour and other shows. And then so how did you discover the other members of Unlikely Candidates, you know?
I mean, well, they were part of my program,
Okay.
and at the very first time I met them, it was just Cole and Kyle playing acoustically, and through a very long, circuitous, time, we were able to get them 2 record deals, and
Yeah, they bounced around to different labels, I believe, or if I remember correctly.
mhm.
Yeah.
And lucky for them, they had scored a #1, literally March of 2020. So
Yeah.
now they have another song called High Low that's number 15, I think. Anyway, it's a wonderful, wonderful story.
Oh yeah, it's fun watching those guys kind of, you know, starve and finally, you know, make it, you know, so
Oh
after
yeah.
working for so long together. So yeah, talk about the work Novocaine. I mean, that's so crazy. It came #1, like, you know, working on that song, you know.
Well, we did a deal with the co-writer Greg Wattenberg on that,
Mhm.
and there's some real magic between Greg Wattenberg, who's a co-writer and producer of that song, and Kyle and TUC. So, you know, in A&R we call that casting. You know, you have to learn how to cast the right people. So I believe that casting works really well.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you have so much amazing music experience. You discovered, made bands huge. What are you offering now to any upcoming artists? Are you working with anything or?
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I do. It's how I feed my family. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly making mistakes.
Only way
And
to learn, you know?
right, you know, so I part of this, Stephen,
Yeah.
is letting people know that I'm available to them, and I'm not that expensive. Certainly, I'm not everyone's cup of Java. I know I'm probably an asshole to some and a genius to others.
Yeah.
I'm available, right? There's no excuse to not be successful in the music business, because it's not really mysterious how to be successful. It really isn't. And that's what I try to impart. That's what I try to mentor my clients on, is let's do this smart. Let's take many, many years of not knowing what to do and figure out why successful artists are successful, and how do we incorporate that into our agenda.
Very cool. So how can people get in touch with you? Is there a website, social media wise? You know?
Israel.com, Loren Israel at Gmail. Hit me up.
Very cool. Yeah. Is there any unknown bands right now you're working with, or you want to give a shout out before I let you go, or people should check out, you know?
Check out RX Soul.
RXO. All right. I got my homework tonight. Loren, thank you so much for taking your time to talk to me.
Thanks, Stephen. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.